Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jackie Hadfield. I'm the Operations Manager for Groundwork London. Groundwork London is part of the Groundwork Federation, but we all work very separately. So although we can speak to each other, apparently, we tend to work separately. So Groundwork London, Groundwork South, although we look after that, Groundwork East, North East, North West, they're all separate part of the Federation. I consider it to be employability's best kept secret because has everybody here heard of Groundwork? You're going to nod, aren't you? That makes me now feel very embarrassed at the fact that when I went for the interview for the job of Operations Manager last July, I'd never heard of Groundwork before. But luckily, James told me to check on the website, as he does with all candidates. So I very quickly learned about what they do. But a lot of people have not heard of us. Well, they may have heard of the horticulture part, where we do an awful lot of work with creating green spaces around London, but aren't necessarily aware of the impact that we have in employment. So geography, I can assure you that my geography of London has grown hugely in the last 10 months, although I didn't realise that Littlehampton is apparently part of London, and Barnet is actually part of West London Alliance, according to the DWP. My favourite, I think, over the last few years is when I worked on community work placements, and Sutton, which as far as I know is in Surrey, because that's where I come from, was reporting into East London. But we all know what DWP maps are like, don't we? So London covers Barnet in the north, and Littlehampton in the south, Stratford in the east, and we actually go as far as Denham across to the west. So when it says London, it really does cover absolutely everything. There is I don't believe there is actually one borough now in London that we have not helped over the last 12 months or are able to help. So now we come on to the contracts that I manage, varied, I think you could say. A lot of them are DWP, ESFA, lottery funded. We'll take money from anywhere if it means that we can help people get back into work. So we have an adult education budget, which is anywhere in London. So we can actually produce a course tailored for whatever program we want, whichever partner we want. It can be any subject, any length of time, and there are no restrictions on the people that we can help. It's been really useful that we can actually look at all the other programs that we have and can tailor something specific for the clients that are on that program. Troubled families, obviously nobody likes to call it that. So in the East, under Serco, it's called Inspiring Families. Obviously, that's people over 18, and basically you have to be part of a family unit. But it is such a broad criteria that it's almost difficult not to fit in as part of a family unit. Somebody doesn't even have to live in the same house. They can just be part of a family. It could be a mother or a father who isn't living in the same house as their children, but it is considered part of a family, so we can help anybody on that. G4S have called theirs Family Works, and we have two areas that we cover here. One is South and Central London, and the one is West. West, of course, being Hounslow, which I recognise as West London, and Barnet, which I'm not sure I do, but West London Alliance as Barnet is West London. So we'll go with that. Work and Health, West London, Barnet. So that's an interesting one. We have two almost competing programmes in the Barnet area. But what that does mean is that if you go for Work and Health, and a third of people don't get on that programme because they're put in the control group, we can then pick them up on troubled families. So there is basically nobody in Barnet that we can't help. It's a big area as well, actually, I didn't realise. This is our lottery funded group, Waves and Coast to Capital, and that's where Littlehampton comes in. So it's actually Coast, Littlehampton to Capital, which actually stops somewhere just north of Croydon. OBF is Our Bright Future. Our Bright Future is for people who are aged 16 to 24. And what we do, we fully support them into work. We have one-to-one contact with an employment liaison officer, and they specifically find a vacancy, and we can subsidise the salary as well on that. It's a wage subsidy programme, which is really handy for helping employers, for encouraging them to take somebody who's perhaps a little bit younger and less experienced than they would think of doing before. We also have the employment advisors who go out and support them face to face and make sure, one, that they're turning up, and two, that they're happy in what they're doing. It's been very successful, and in fact we have some people at Groundwork who have come through that programme and some who are going through that now. Elevate is for refugees. We have about 250 clients on there who are refugees. We work in partnership with Refugee Action. They tend to deal with more pastoral things, so anything which to do with housing, and then obviously once they've got that sorted and they know where they're going to live, because they don't necessarily when they first come to us, then we can deal with the employment issues and help them get into employment. It's a very interesting programme because you've got some very, very highly skilled and qualified people where their qualification doesn't translate when it comes into this country, and it's very difficult sometimes for them to think that they have to start again from scratch when they've qualified, they've got degrees, and they can't use them here. But actually, some of them can. There are some qualifications that you can take which are deliberately devised to translate an EU qualification into the UK. But we will supply travel, interview prep, same as most of the others, but all clothing, translators if necessary. We do an awful lot in order to help them integrate. It's not just the employment, it's integrating into the community as well. And ACE stands for Able, Capable, Employed. That again, wage subsidy, but those are for people who are anybody over 25. So we actually have everybody that we can serve on a wage subsidy. They do have to have long-term health conditions, but we can actually help that. And again, with people aged over 25, if they may not have worked for some time, they may have a disability, the employer is far more likely to give them a chance if we're actually paying the wage up to national minimum wage. The idea is that if somebody goes in and works for a company, it could be working for your company for Scope, they go in and it's up to 6 months that we will support that person. At the end of that 6 months, they would have made themselves indispensable, and somebody will say, do you know what, they've done a really good job and we're going to keep them on. Worst case, they've got 6 months current work experience on their CV, and that makes them an awful lot more employable to employers if we then get them into a subsequent job, and that we will do. As soon as we find out from the employer that they're not going to be able to be kept on after the 6 months, then we will make sure that we support that person. That's OBF for younger people and ACE for over 25. We will support them into alternative employment after that 6 months. We've got NEAT, South London. That's only just started this month. That's an interesting one because obviously none of the others are dealing with 16 to 19-year-olds, and at Groundwork we actually have a youth team who historically have already done that, but this one is a little bit more employment related, so it's come under my purview. And then we've got this one here, visually impaired. Really looking forward to taking that on. We're just completing the due diligence and everything now, so hopefully that will be up and running in June. When we were saying about the variety of contracts, I mean geographically, and when you're looking at the sort of the range of contracts that we have, diversity, which is where this started leading up to, is very important, and we know that our participants are diverse. And what I wanted to challenge anybody in here is to think of a sector of the population of London that we cannot support, that Groundwork cannot support back into work. I asked an office full of my staff this morning and they couldn't come up with any. So don't try too hard, but can anyone think of any sector of the population? We couldn't think of anybody at all that we would not be able to support back into work. the idea, isn't it? There is absolutely, we can help everybody. If somebody wants to work, then we can help them get into employment. Also the workforce. I feel that our workforce needs to be as diverse as our clientele. We've got 5 managers, 7 senior case managers, 5 employment liaison officers, 1 payroll admin, because obviously we do wage subsidies, and 34 advisors. But out of that, 7 of them, since I started last July, 7 of them have come from our own caseloads. First of all, quite helps the outcomes, because you can do your in-work support. You know, are you still here? Are you still enjoying yourself? Great. It really does help. But it also means that we have somebody who is working with our refugees who came from that programme, can talk, is a refugee, can really understand where they've come from. We've got somebody on troubled families who was on the troubled families contract in South London, and she really understands how much we've helped, and that's why she wanted to go back into it. She had touched on a bit of helping people previously, not in employability, but she's really good because she sat that other side of the table. She knows what it's like to sign on every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks by remote now on Universal Credit, but she knows how difficult that is. And when people sit in front of her and say, well, I've been unemployed for 5 years, so there's no way I'm going to get back into work. She said, yeah, but I was unemployed for 6 years, and I've done it. I said, yeah, I know, but I'm over 50, so I'm not going to get back into work. She said, I'm over 50. And it's almost like you keep throwing excuses and barriers at me, and I'll keep knocking them down. And it's absolutely invaluable. The trust that she gets from her clients is incredible, and that's because they really believe that she understands where they're coming from. And talking about that, we also have another person who has come from the work programme, in fact. I think it was June 2011 cohort. And that's me. I was one of the first people on the work programme, and now I'm here. My background's finance. But it was invaluable. I went on the work programme and I was sent to a provider, and I'm not going to say who that is, J Forest. And they didn't know what to do with me. I'd been a senior manager previously. So I'd go in 1 week and, you managed 120 people, that's a bit intimidating. Can you reduce it? And then you go in another time, well, that's not strong enough. Can you increase it? They didn't know what to do with me. So as it was fairly new, the work programme, the job centre was saying, how are you getting on? And I said, I could do their job better than them. So they were recruiting at the time, and I decided I'd give it a go. So I started as an employment advisor back in February 2012. And again, I could sit there and go, yeah, I've been unemployed for some time. You have to be if you're on the work programme, so I was unemployed for some time. And I'm now in work. And yeah, I'm over 50, and I wish I'd not said that on camera now. But I am. And so, you know, and I hadn't come from this industry. It was a completely different role. I'd been in debt collection previously, but that's talking to people. It's negotiating and persuading. So the skills were the same. And the fact that I could tell people that made them believe that perhaps I could help them do the same. So 7 of our staff actually come from our programme, and it's been absolutely invaluable. And that is it. Thank you very much.